Lena sighed as she stepped into the sleek, modern office of the computer dating service. She had tried everything: blind dates, dating apps, even a matchmaking aunt who swore she had a nice young man for her. He turned out to be 20 years older and still living with his mother. Determined to find the perfect partner, she sat across from the matchmaker, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a knowing smile. "I'm looking for a spouse," Lena declared. "Can you help me find a suitable one?" The matchmaker steepled her fingers. "Of course. What exactly are you looking for?" Lena leaned forward, her excitement growing. "Well, he needs to be good-looking, polite, humorous, sporty, knowledgeable, and good at singing and dancing." The matchmaker nodded and began typing. "He should be willing to spend the whole day at home with me if I decide not to go out," Lena continued. "He should always be ready to tell me interesting stories when I want to talk, but know when to be completely silent when I need to rest." The matchmaker's fingers flew across the keyboard as she entered the details. A few moments later, the computer beeped and a small slip of paper printed out. With a satisfied smile, the matchmaker handed it to Lena. Lena eagerly read the result. "Buy a television." On their anniversary night, Mark had a plan. For once, he was going to give his wife Emma a break. No cooking, no cleaning, just relaxation. "Tonight, you just sit back and enjoy yourself," he said, leading her to the cozy den. He handed her a glass of wine, flipped open her favorite magazine, adjusted the soft glow of the reading lamp, and even slipped off her shoes, gently propping her feet on a cushion. Emma sighed happily. "This is so romantic," she thought, watching as Mark marched confidently toward the kitchen. 2.5 hours later, romance had turned into confusion. Still no dinner. Her stomach growled. The house smelled interesting. A mix of something burning and what might have once been spices. Quietly, she tiptoed to the kitchen, expecting to find a charming, home-cooked meal waiting. Instead, she found chaos. Pots and pans were scattered everywhere. The counter was covered in flour, oil, and what looked suspiciously like an entire bottle of ketchup. The oven door was open, releasing a cloud of smoke, and in the middle of it all stood Mark, hair disheveled, apron covered in stains, pulling something unrecognizable from the tray. He spotted her in the doorway and grinned, slightly out of breath. "Almost ready," he announced, triumphantly. "Sorry it took me so long. I had to refill the pepper shaker." Emma blinked. "How long could that have taken?" Mark wiped his forehead. "More than an hour, I reckon. Wasn't easy stuffing it through those dumb little holes." At 84 years old, Harold had everything: wealth, success, and now a stunning 25-year-old wife named Tiffany. They had just returned from an extravagant honeymoon in Switzerland, a trip filled with 5-star dining, breathtaking mountain views, and just enough excitement to remind Harold that his heart wasn't as young as his bride. Unfortunately, upon their return, Harold suffered a sudden coronary episode and was rushed to the hospital. Now, hooked up to machines and surrounded by beeping monitors, he lay in a crisp white bed as Tiffany sat beside him, dabbing her eyes with a silk handkerchief. Summoning what little strength he had, Harold reached for her hand. "Sweetheart," he wheezed, "no matter what happens to me, you'll be taken care of. You'll have an income of $250,000 a year. My home in Palm Springs, my ranch in Texas, and of course my Mercedes. You'll never need to worry about money." Tiffany let out a soft sob. "Oh, darling, please don't talk like that. You've been so good to me already. If you go, I'll be devastated. There must be something I can do to help you. Please, tell me what I can do." Harold's eyes flickered with desperation as he struggled to take a breath. "Well," he gasped, "you can quit pinching the inlet tube to my oxygen supply for starters." Saturday evening, Raj sat comfortably on the couch, scrolling through his phone, when he casually mentioned, "Mom called me. She's arriving tomorrow. Her train gets in at 4 o'clock. His wife, Priya, who had been peacefully sipping her tea, froze mid-sip. Her eyes narrowed. "What? She was just here 4 months ago. Why is she coming again?" she huffed. "And of all days she had to come on a Sunday? I was looking forward to sleeping in. And 4 a.m.? Where will she even find an auto at that hour?" Raj sighed, already bracing himself. Priya wasn't done. And listen, I'm not making any special breakfast. She can manage with biscuits and bread, and the kids? Ugh, they won't get to go out and play because she'll stuff them with chocolates, toffees, and pastries. How long is she staying this time? Raj looked up calmly and said, "Not my mom. Your mom is coming." At a grand conference hall, an acclaimed motivational speaker stood before a captivated audience. With a confident smile, he began his speech. "The best years of my life were spent in the arms of a woman who wasn't my wife." A stunned silence filled the room. Gasps echoed. Eyebrows shot up, then with perfect timing he continued, "She was my mother." The tension melted into laughter and applause. The audience cheered, impressed by his clever play on words. Watching the scene unfold on television, Ramesh, an otherwise sensible man, chuckled to himself. "What a brilliant line!" he thought. "I should try this at home." That night after dinner, he leaned back in his chair and, with the same dramatic pause as the speaker, announced loudly, "The best years of my life were spent in the arms of a woman who wasn't my wife." A pin-drop silence filled the kitchen. His wife, who had been washing dishes, froze mid-motion. The grip on her ladle tightened. Ramesh smiled nervously, trying to recall the second line. His mind raced. What was it again? His wife's eyes narrowed. Why couldn't he remember? Before he could finish, a sudden splash of boiling hot water landed on him. It was a peaceful Sunday morning. The sun streamed through the kitchen window as Lisa stood by the stove, expertly frying eggs for breakfast. The sizzle of butter in the pan filled the air, and she hummed softly to herself, enjoying the quiet start to the day. Then out of nowhere, boom! The kitchen door flew open, and in stormed her husband Dave, looking like a man on the verge of a breakdown. "Careful!" he gasped. "Put in more butter. Oh my gosh, Lisa, more butter. They're going to stick." Lisa blinked. "What? You're cooking too many at once. Turn them now." Dave's voice was climbing in urgency. "Where's more butter? Do we even have more butter? Oh no, they're gonna burn." Lisa's grip on the spatula tightened. Her patience, however, loosened. "Be careful, I said be careful. You never listen to me when you're cooking. Turn them, hurry up. Are you crazy? Have you lost your mind? And don't forget to salt them. You always forget to salt them. Use the salt. Use the salt." Lisa slowly turned, eyes blazing, spatula in hand like a warrior ready for battle. "What in the world is wrong with you? You think I don't know how to fry a couple of eggs?" Dave, now eerily calm, leaned against the counter, smirking. "I just wanted to show you what it feels like when I'm driving." It was a quiet afternoon on the highway. The car cruised along at a steady 40 miles per hour, the hum of the engine filling the silence between a long-married couple. The wife, Susan, focused on the road ahead, hands firm on the wheel. Her husband, Tom, sat beside her, looking out at the passing scenery, until he turned, took a deep breath, and spoke. "Darling, I know we've been married for 20 years, but I want a divorce." Susan said nothing. Her expression didn't change. Her hands didn't flinch. The only noticeable shift, the car inched up to 45 miles per hour. Tom cleared his throat and continued, "I don't want you to try and talk me out of it because I've been having an affair with your best friend, and frankly, she's a far better lover than you." Still, no reaction. But the speedometer ticked up to 55 miles per hour. Encouraged by her silence, he pushed on. "I want the house," he declared, 65 miles per hour. "I want the car, too." 75 miles per hour, he smirked. "And while we're at it, I'll be keeping the bank accounts, the credit cards, the boat, and the dog." The car suddenly began to drift. Not left, not right, straight ahead toward a massive concrete bridge wall. Tom sat up, throat dry. "Oh, honey." Still, Susan said nothing, her grip tightening on the wheel, her foot pressing just a little harder on the accelerator. Now, at 80 miles per hour, panic finally set in. "Wait, hold on. Isn't there anything you want?" Tom asked, his voice cracking slightly. At last, Susan turned to him. A small, satisfied smile played on her lips. "No," she said calmly. "I have everything I need." Tom blinked. "Oh, really? And what exactly do you have?" Just before the car slammed into the wall, Susan glanced at him one last time and whispered, "The airbag." For years, old Henry and his wife, Martha, had what could only be described as a war zone of a marriage. Their fights were legendary, shouting matches that could be heard 3 streets away, dishes flying like missiles, and threats exchanged like friendly greetings. But there was one promise Henry made over and over again, one that sent chills down the spines of their neighbors. "When I die, I will dig my way up and out of the grave to come back and haunt you for the rest of your life." And knowing Henry, mean as a rattlesnake, mysterious disappearances of stray cats always coinciding with his nightly strolls, people believed him. Some swore he dabbled in dark arts, others simply stayed out of his way. Then, one day, Henry died, abruptly, strangely. No one asked too many questions. His funeral was held quickly, and the casket remained firmly closed. Martha, however, wasted no time mourning. The moment the last handful of dirt hit the coffin, she marched straight to the local bar, ordered the finest whiskey, and partied like she'd just won the lottery. Her neighbors, confused and horrified, huddled together before approaching her cautiously. "Martha," one brave soul asked, "aren't you afraid?" "Henry swore he'd claw his way out of that grave and haunt you." Martha took a slow sip of her drink, set the glass down, and smirked. "Let the jerk dig," she shrugged. "I had him buried upside down." After a long day at work, Jack walked through the front door, exhausted but happy to be home. His newlywed wife, Lisa, greeted him with an excited smile, practically bouncing on her feet. "I have great news for you," she beamed. "Pretty soon we're going to be 3 in this house instead of 2. Jack froze. His eyes widened, then realization dawned. His heart leaped with joy. He rushed forward, scooping Lisa into his arms, covering her with kisses. "Oh my God, this is amazing! I can't believe it! I'm going to be a dad!" Lisa giggled, pulling back slightly. "Oh, I'm so glad you feel that way." Jack nodded eagerly, eyes glistening with happiness. "Because tomorrow morning my mother moves in with us." Lou sat hunched over the bar, his eyes locked on the amber liquid in his shot glass. One after another, he tossed them back, each gulp burning away the sorrow in his chest. Just then, his longtime friend, Mike, walked into the tavern and did a double-take. In all the years he had known Lou, 15 to be exact, he had never seen him drink. "Lou, what the hell are you doing? I've never seen you touch alcohol before," Mike exclaimed, pulling up a stool beside him. "What's going on?" Lou didn't even lift his gaze. He grabbed the freshly poured shot, sighed, and muttered, "My wife just ran off with my best friend." Mike's jaw dropped. "What? But Lou, I'm your best friend." At that, Lou slowly turned to him, eyes red and unfocused, a lopsided smile creeping onto his face. He lifted his glass, nodded, and slurred, "Not anymore." It had been a long day at the office, capped off by an evening reception where the drinks flowed a little too freely. As the last guests trickled out, Jim noticed his secretary, Linda, struggling to find her balance. Being the gentleman that he was, and not wanting to deal with the fallout of an employee stumbling home, he offered to drive her back. It was a harmless act of kindness, but Jim knew his wife, Karen, had a jealous streak. She could turn a simple gesture into a full-blown interrogation, so he decided it was best not to mention it. The next evening, as Jim and Karen were on their way to dinner, he glanced down and froze. Peeking out from under the passenger seat was a lone, high-heeled shoe. His stomach dropped. Linda must have kicked it off in her slightly tipsy state, leaving behind the perfect evidence of what looked like a scandalous night. Thinking fast, Jim waited until Karen was admiring the city lights through her window. With a swift motion, he reached down, grabbed the shoe, and flung it out onto the curb. He let out a silent sigh of relief. Disaster averted. Moments later, they pulled into the restaurant parking lot. Just as Jim was about to relax, he noticed Karen shifting uncomfortably in her seat. She frowned and looked around. "Oh no," Jim thought. "What now?" "Honey," she asked, turning to him, "have you seen my other shoe?" It had been a long week, And when Friday finally rolled around, Dave could already hear the call of freedom. It was payday, a cause for celebration. Instead of heading straight home, he made a slight detour to meet up with the boys. One drink turned into two, which turned into, well, an entire weekend of questionable decisions. By the time Sunday night arrived, Dave staggered through the front door feeling a mix of exhaustion and regret. He barely had time to set his keys down before he was met with the full wrath of his wife, Lisa. For 2 hours straight, she unleashed a verbal storm that would have made a seasoned drill sergeant take notes. Every excuse Dave tried was drowned out by her unrelenting fury. And then suddenly, she stopped. Her voice dropped to an eerie calm. "How would you like it?" she asked, arms crossed. "If you didn't see me for 2 or 3 days?" Still riding the false confidence of his weekend escapades, Dave smirked. "That'd be fine with me." Monday came. No sign of Lisa. Tuesday passed. Still nothing. By Wednesday, he was starting to worry. By Thursday, the swelling in his eye had finally gone down just enough that he could see her barely out of the corner of his left eye. One afternoon, a weary-looking old dog wandered into my yard. He wasn't a stray. I could tell from his well-groomed coat, sturdy collar, and comfortably round belly that he belonged to someone who took good care of him. He approached me with a slow, deliberate gait, his eyes calm and trusting. I gave him a few pats on the head, and without hesitation, he followed me into the house. He made his way down the hall, found a cozy corner, curled up, and promptly fell into a deep sleep. An hour later, he woke up, stretched, and ambled toward the door. I let him out, and he trotted off without a sound. The next day, he was back. Same routine. He greeted me in the yard, walked inside, settled into his usual spot, and snoozed peacefully for an hour. This went on for weeks. Curious, I decided to solve the mystery. I attached a note to his collar. "I would love to know who owns this sweet dog. Are you aware that almost every afternoon he comes to my house for a nap?" The next day he returned as usual, but this time there was a note pinned to his collar in response. "He lives in a house with a nonstop talking wife, 6 children, and 2 toddlers under the age of 3. He's just trying to catch up on his sleep. Can I come with him tomorrow?" Standing at the edge of a peaceful lake, a man suddenly spotted a woman flailing desperately in the deep water. Panic seized him. He couldn't swim. "Help! Somebody help!" he shouted. A trout fisherman, dressed in waders and holding a fishing rod, came running. "My wife is drowning!" the man cried. "Please save her! I'll give you $100. Without hesitation, the fisherman dove in. His powerful strokes cut through the water, and within seconds he reached the struggling woman. Wrapping an arm around her, he pulled her safely to shore. Coughing and sputtering, the woman collapsed at the man's feet. The fisherman stood up, dripping wet, and held out his hand. "All right, where's my 100? The man took a closer look at the woman, his expression shifting. Look, when I saw her going under for the 3rd time, I thought it was my wife." He sighed. "But this is actually my mother-in-law." The fisherman blinked, then reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and handed the man a bill. "Just my luck," he muttered. "How much do I owe you?" One day at college, Johnny spotted a gorgeous girl walking past him. Feeling bold, he smirked and asked, "Hey, what would you think of me if I squeezed your chest and ran away?" The girl, without missing a beat, smiled and replied, "I would think that there was a fool who could drive the whole car but ran off after just honking the horn." Reporter: "Welcome, sir. To begin, how would you describe your married life?" Married man: "First of all, married life is an oxymoron." Reporter: "But people say marriages are made in heaven." Married man: "Sure, if heaven is full of Chinese people." Reporter: I don't follow." Married man: "Ever been to a Chinese restaurant? You order something, but what arrives is never quite what you expected. That's marriage?" Reporter: "Interesting perspective. Yours was an arranged marriage, right? How was that experience?" Married man: "An arranged marriage for a man is like Eid for a goat. First, they treat you like a prince, pamper you, feed you lavish meals, dress you in bright colors. Then you realize why." Reporter: So when did it hit you that married life is, well, dangerous?" Married man: "From day one. Marriage is a warning, my friend. That's why the bride always wears red. Reporter. But I've heard that arranged marriages last longer than love marriages. Any truth to that? Married man. Oh, love marriages? Ha! They follow a three-stage evolution. We are made for each other. We are mad for each other. We are made for each other. Reporter. That sounds ominous. So how do married people pass the time? Married man. Mostly we watch a lot of TV. She watches Punarviva, and I start wishing for one. Reporter. What about doing fun activities together? Maybe playing games? Married man. Oh, we play games. Right now we're in a thrilling round of You to Be Blamed. She's leading by 1,876 to 1. Reporter. Wow. So what kind of conversations do you have in your free time? Married man. She asks a lot of questions, and when I answer, she starts questioning my answers. It's a never-ending loop. Reporter. All right, before we wrap up, any survival tips for the unmarried folks? Married man. Oh, absolutely. Take notes. A. Don't waste energy trying to make her laugh. She already thinks you're a clown. B. Never reply to her "I love you" text with just "okay, that's a death wish." C. A perfect husband is one who apologizes every time his wife makes a mistake. D. And lastly, take her on holidays to faraway places. It might increase the chances of her getting lost. Reporter. Gulp. Thank you for your, valuable insights. Married man. No problem. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go apologize for something I didn't do. Officer Mike Fenwick had been scheduled for an all-night shift at the station, but a slow evening meant he was relieved early. Delighted by the unexpected break, he arrived home 4 hours ahead of schedule, right at 2 a.m. Not wanting to wake his wife, he carefully undressed in the dark, silently creeping into the bedroom. Just as he was about to slide under the covers, his wife stirred. "Mike, dearest," she mumbled sleepily, "would you go down to the all-night drugstore and get me some aspirin? I've got a splitting headache." Mike sighed, but knew better than to argue. "Of course, honey," he said, feeling his way back across the dark room. Still groggy, he fumbled with his clothes, got dressed as best as he could, and headed out into the quiet night. When he arrived at the pharmacy, the druggist looked up in surprise. His eyes widened as he took in Mike's appearance. "Officer Fenwick?" the pharmacist said, barely suppressing a chuckle. "Yeah, so," Mike replied, rubbing his tired eyes. The pharmacist smirked. "Then why the heck are you dressed like the fire chief?" "Dear ex-wife, I'm writing this letter to tell you that I'm leaving you forever. I've been a good man to you for 7 years, and what do I have to show for it? Absolutely nothing. These last 2 weeks have been hell. Your boss called today and told me you quit your job. That was the last straw. Last week, you didn't even notice when I got a new haircut. I cooked your favorite meal. I even wore a brand new pair of silk boxers, something to spice things up. And what did you do? You scarfed down dinner in 2 minutes, ignored me completely, and went straight to sleep after watching all of your soaps. You don't tell me you love me anymore. You don't want sex or anything that connects us as husband and wife. Either you're cheating on me, or you just don't love me anymore. Whatever the case, I'm done. Don't bother looking for me. Your sister and I are moving away to West Virginia together. Have a great life. Your ex-husband, P.S. Don't write back. It's over. Dear ex-husband, nothing has made my day more than receiving your letter. In fact, I'm framing it. You're right. We have been married for 7 years, but calling yourself a good man is a bit of a stretch. I watch my soaps so much because they drown out your constant whining and griping. Too bad they don't work completely. I did notice your haircut last week. The first thought that crossed my mind, you look just like a girl. But since my mother always taught me, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. I kept my mouth shut. And about that favorite meal you cooked, I think you got me confused with my sister because I stopped eating pork 7 years ago. Now those brand new silk boxers? I turned away, not because I wasn't interested, but because you forgot to remove the $49.99 price tag. And funny enough, my sister had borrowed exactly $50 from me that morning. A coincidence? Probably not. Despite all of this, I still believed we could work things out. I still loved you. So when I won $10 million in the lottery last week, I quit my job, packed our bags, and bought 2 first-class tickets to Jamaica. But when I got home, you were gone. Everything happens for a reason, I guess. Oh, and my lawyer says that your letter ensures you won't get a dime of my winnings. Take care. Your ex-wife, rich as hell and free. P.S. I don't know if I ever mentioned this, but my sister Carla was born Carl. Hope that's not a problem. After just a few years of marriage filled with constant arguments and cold silences, a young couple reached a breaking point. They both knew something had to change. "This isn't working," the wife said. "I know," the husband admitted. Reluctantly, they agreed. Counseling was their last hope. When they arrived at the therapist's office, the counselor wasted no time. He leaned forward, laced his fingers together, and asked, "All right, what seems to be the problem?" The husband slumped in his chair, staring at the floor, unwilling or unable to speak. The wife, however, did not hesitate. She launched into a rapid-fire monologue detailing every complaint, every disappointment, and every frustration she had endured since the day they said, "I do." For 15 minutes, she spoke without pause. The husband sat silently. The counselor listened patiently. Then, without warning, the counselor stood up, walked over to the wife, gently lifted her from her seat, and kissed her. Not just a peck, a deep, passionate, take-your-breath-away kind of kiss. When he finally set her back down, she was speechless. Her eyes wide, her breath caught in her throat. The husband, meanwhile, stared in absolute disbelief. The counselor straightened his tie, turned to the husband, and said, "This is what your wife needs at least twice a week." The husband scratched his head, thinking for a moment. Finally, he nodded and said, "All right, I can have her here on Tuesdays and Thursdays." During the wedding rehearsal, the groom pulled the pastor aside, glancing over his shoulder to make sure no one was listening. "Listen, Pastor," he whispered, slipping a crisp $100 bill into the minister's hand. "I'd really appreciate it if you could, tweak the vows a little." The pastor raised an eyebrow. "Tweak? Yeah, just leave out the parts about love, honor, and obey, and maybe that bit about being faithful forever." The pastor said nothing, just tucked the bill into his pocket with a small nod. The groom smirked, satisfied, and walked away. The big day arrived, and the ceremony went off without a hitch, until it was time for the vows. The pastor turned to the groom, locked eyes with him, and in a steady, authoritative voice asked, "Do you solemnly promise to prostrate yourself before her, obey her every command and wish, serve her breakfast in bed every morning of your life, and swear eternally before God and your lovely wife that you will never so much as glance at another woman for as long as you both shall live?" The groom's eyes widened in horror. A bead of sweat formed at his temple. He gulped, stole a quick glance at his bride, who was watching him very closely, and croaked out, "Yes?" As soon as the ceremony was over, he cornered the pastor. "I thought we had a deal," he hissed. The pastor smiled and discreetly pressed a folded bill into the groom's hand. "She made me a better offer," he whispered. The hospital recovery room was filled with the soft hum of machines and the occasional murmur of nurses tending to their patients. In the corner, Sarah sat patiently by her husband Mark's bedside, holding his hand as he slowly emerged from anesthesia. His eyelids fluttered open for just a moment, his gaze hazy and unfocused. A dreamy smile spread across his face as he looked at Sarah, his expression one of pure admiration. "You are so beautiful," he whispered, his voice groggy as if he were seeing an angel bathed in heavenly light. Sarah's heart melted. It wasn't the most romantic setting, surrounded by beeping monitors and the occasional snore from another recovering patient, but in that moment, nothing else mattered. She squeezed his hand tighter, choosing to stay by his side despite the sterile, uninviting atmosphere. Moments later, Mark slipped back into unconsciousness, his mouth hanging open as he started snoring loudly, so loudly that a few irritated nurses exchanged glances. Sarah rolled her eyes but smiled, knowing this was just part of the process. A little while later, Mark stirred again. This time, his eyes opened wider, his mind a bit clearer. He looked at Sarah once more, his expression still affectionate, but different. "You're cute," he murmured with a sleepy grin. Sarah blinked. "Cute?" Her smile vanished. Letting go of his hand, she crossed her arms and gave him a sharp look. "It was a beautiful last time," she huffed. "Now I'm just cute. What happened to my beauty?" Mark blinked at her, his mind slowly catching up to reality. Then, with a sheepish chuckle, he mumbled, "Honey, I'm recovering from anesthesia."